Now we're going to turn to deaths in the dark. Why is the state of Michigan failing to respond when scores of psychiatric patients suddenly die?
It's a question being asked tonight by 7 investigator Ross Jones and grieving family members all across the state.
He just said he didn't want to live any longer, that he couldn't take it anymore. He and his girlfriend were having problems.
Sherry and Deno's son Darren had battled depression and bipolar disorder for years. And on this night, he wanted to die. So he came here to Forest View Psychiatric Hospital in Grand Rapids for help. After his 5th day there, doctors wrote he was anxious and paranoid, his anxiety level an 8.5 out of 10. But only 2 days later, doctors said he had improved and was well enough to be released. His family wasn't so sure.
The day they let him out, I begged with them not to do it. And I said, at the very least, let me pick him up.
Darren took a taxi instead, and within hours of his release, he would return home and take his life.
My oldest son came in, and he said, "Mom, Darren's gone." I said, "How? He just got out. How?"
When a patient like Darren dies, the state requires hospitals to tell them by filling out this form, alerting them to any death happening inside a psychiatric hospital or within 2 days of being released.
I called the hospital, and they said, "Oh, we'll do a report to the state of Michigan, and the state of Michigan has to do an investigation."
Except they didn't. Not in Darren's death, and scores of others we've uncovered. From patients who took their lives only hours after being released to others who committed suicide in the very hospital supposed to make them better. Even in cases where the cause of death was listed as unknown, the state asked no questions.
In and out of the hospital, and they would just keep releasing her.
Alyssa Negus' struggle with mental illness lasted most of her life. Her sister Rayanne remembers the last time she saw her on her birthday.
I said, "You look rough. You need to do something." And she got teary-eyed and said, "I'm trying," and got in her car.
Alyssa admitted herself to St. Joseph Mercy Hospital in Chelsea, requesting treatment for suicidal ideation. Records show she was there for about 2 days before being discharged. The night of her release, according to police, Alyssa pulled off on the side of the highway, got out of her car, and stepped into traffic. The state was alerted to Alyssa's death, but did not investigate. In fact, of the 151 psychiatric deaths since 2016, state officials investigated just 2.
They're just stamping it and putting it in a pile. That was my daughter. Like, she don't matter.
You know, unfortunately, sometimes these unfortunate events occur.
Larry Horvath is the director of the Bureau of Community and Health Services. The office notified each time a psychiatric patient dies. He declined to be interviewed for this story, but did speak with us back in October, telling us that the law, as written today, doesn't require the state to investigate patient deaths. Instead, he said, he expects hospitals to investigate themselves.
This is part of the process, and this is part of the safety net that we have in place is for hospitals to evaluate this.
How can you call it a safety net if when you learn that a patient left a hospital and within 2 days was found in his bathtub with his throat cut, you don't pick up the phone and ask any questions? How is that a safety net?
Because our statutory authority limits us. We are not investigators to look at, hey, what was the cause of death?
They've received death reports as they're required to, but did nothing with them. That's very concerning.
Michelle Roberts is executive director for Michigan Protection and Advocacy Service in Lansing, a nonprofit designated by the governor to protect the rights of people with disabilities. When we told them that deaths like Alyssa's were never looked into by state officials, they opened an investigation into hers and 70 others.
There could be systemic issues and avoidable problems that could have been addressed had they just looked.
Soon, they may have to. In Lansing today, as a result of our reporting, 2 lawmakers are working on legislation that would require the state to investigate psychiatric deaths going forward.
People are dropping the ball. Nobody's being held accountable. I can't get my son back, but I want to stop this from happening to another family.
In a statement, St. Joseph Mercy Chelsea officials said they are routinely reviewing patient safety standards throughout their hospitals. Forest View Hospital stressed that its patients have special, often complex needs that require ongoing community-based treatment. Neither hospital would comment on the deaths we just told you about. We have posted their full statements on our website, WXYZ.com.
So much pain for these families. So tell us, what's the status of those bills in Lansing?
Yeah, that's the good news. The Senate bill was introduced yesterday. The House bill expected to be introduced next week. Laura, the state agency that is supposed to look into these deaths, has expressed some willingness to change their rules, so that could be a good sign. We'll have more on both those bills tomorrow at 6.
Well, at least your stories and your investigations are moving forward and helping bring about change.
We hope so.
All right, thank you so much, Ross. We also want to say, if you are thinking about suicide or worried about a loved one, there is always someone you can talk to 24 hours a day at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Just call 1-800-273-8255.